So my Anderson shelter, this is a set of still pictures just to show you exactly how I restored it. There's a picture here of when we first found it in a garden, a neighbour's garden. It looked very tired and sad, so I thought, let's get it, let's restore it. So the first thing I've done was got plans of an Anderson shelter just to see exactly what parts I needed, and then we started with the excavation. We dug it out, got covered in gnat bites, etc., but we managed to dig it out. When I dug it out, I found out that the bottoms of the curb bits were quite rusted, so we had to repair the bottoms. Here you can see a photograph of the top of the original shelter. You can see the nuts and the washers are still in place. I managed to salvage all those nuts and washers, so I think out of the original we got the forward and back bits, the curved bits, and all the nuts and washers all salvaged. Then I found out that each section had a maker's plaque on the inside, which was quite nice. I then subsequently learned that there's about 8 or 9 different manufacturers of Anderson shelters. The next photograph we're going to come on to is going to show you a close-up of the bolts on top and the condition they were in when we found the original shelter. Obviously I'd sprayed them with a bit of oil just to free them up, but as you can see they're not in bad condition. The thick corrugated iron has survived, so we took our time, we took it all apart, and then we laid it out on the floor just to see exactly what we'd recovered. The beauty of this was I also recovered the rails of the shelter, the thing it sits on under the ground, the big iron rails, which are quite nice. If you look in the second video with the plan, the second picture with the plan, you can see the rails, little H girders, which were quite nice to recover. So there's a friend of mine helping me undo it. There's the rails. Now you can see there the rails in the floor. The rails were buried. Amazingly, they'd survived. The thing was under a tree, so it was quite moisture free. The tree had sucked all the moisture out of the ground, so they hadn't rotted to bits. So we dug around the rails, dug all them out. The 4 little pins that held the rails in, we managed to save them. Don't know if you can see it, they're in the bottom right hand corner of this photo. So we dug all the angle iron out, washed it, jet washed it, brought it all home, laid it all out just to see exactly what we had. Then I realised that some of the panels, it wasn't going to be so straightforward because some of the panels had rotted. There's what I recovered. There's the rails in the foreground there, they're quite nice. I managed to get a contact who had a load of Anderson shelter parts in his garage. His dad used to fit them, believe it or not, in the war, or deliver them, and he had about 5 or 6 curved panels that were unissued. So I managed to get 6 unissued curved panels which had 0 rust on them, and I sold these original curved ones that you've just seen. Here you can see the completed and cleaned bolts and washers and the escape handles there that I used as templates. So there's another photograph of the rails on the bottom in the foreground there. They were okay. I red oxided them and we managed to save them. The shelter started taking place. I think my shelter's probably the remains of about 5 shelters overall. I managed to get parts from each shelter that I found and replace bad parts that I'd already recovered. I think that's the rear. You see the escape handles there and the bolts. I took some photographs and laid it all out. I managed to get these rear panels from this guy who had some untouched panels, and the rear panels I got were mint. You can see the extent of the rust at the bottom of the front panel there, absolutely rusted out the bottom foot. So the panels I got from this guy, I replaced these ones. I sold these on and the guy repaired them, has made another shelter out of these ones, but the panels I've used are new old stock. There's a nice photograph of the rail that it sits on. A lot of people forget about these when they restore a shelter. They just make the shelter out of the corrugated, forgetting that these things used to sit on a rail. Well, there you go, that's what the rail looks like. That's an original. And that gives you also the perfect size to base your shelter on. There's a little photograph of an area of my garden where we laid all the parts out, and all the badly corroded pieces I managed to change. I think that's one shelter you see there, the original one we dug out. So once I'd had them all shot blasted, I red oxided them. In fact, that is an example of a panel, another panel I got from a compost heap that's intact. You notice the bottom on the left, there's no rust on it, which is quite nice. I think I used that. I think from memory, I only got 4 panels from this other guy, and I also already had 2. Okay, now there's a photograph of the back and the forward sections that I just, I don't think they've been shot blasted, they've been washed there and repaired. I bolted pieces on the bottom just to get them squared up. And this was prior to me sourcing the newer panels that I changed these for. I've subsequently sold these ones to somebody else. So the newer ones that I got out of this guy's garage, they are proper Anderson parts that were never fitted during the war. I could not believe it. I walked in and saw a pile of them, and he said my dad kept them from the war, and they were never put up. Either he had them as his own personal shelter, or he used to deliver them. I can't remember the story. So a lot of these pictures here you see I've actually sold on. There's a photograph of the repaired panels at the bottom. I've bolted bits on to get rid of the rust from the donor panels. There's a nice photo there of the red oxided. They're the perfect ones. See, there's no rust at the bottom and they haven't been repaired. This is going on in the build. It took about a year to do this. They're all nicely red oxided. I had them shot blasted just to take away the rust. Incidentally, when I had them shot blasted, the guy who blasted them managed to blast all the original makers crests off them as well. I was not very happy about that, so in the end they've been painted fully. I did originally say to him I only wanted them blasted around the panels where the printed crests were, but that's how they came back. There's a nice photo of a top coat there. I think I gave them a protective coat and a couple of coats of Battleship Grey. As you can see there, originally they would have been just galvanised, but obviously these have lost their galvanisation. But Battleship Grey brings them up quite nice. And laying them out in the sun was quite nice there. As you can see them drying off. Lovely condition. Again, they are the panels that I got from that chap. They are literally brand new, never used Anderson parts. How rare is that? I couldn't believe my luck when I got them, having spent 6 months doing up the other ones and bolting bits on. Started to amass a massive collection here of parts. You can see there the 6 curved bits, all the rails. I've painted everything and prepared for a final assembly. And I've actually sold the older ones with the repaired bits by this point. There's a nice photo of the rail at the bottom. In each corner of that there's 4 little pins that hold the rail together, and the shelter sits nicely on that. The side pieces just slot down into that little U bend on each side there, right and left. So you're looking at it now. Another photograph of probably about the 3rd coat of Battleship Grey, which I've applied to the side of the shelter, which was quite nice there. As you can see in the sun, they're just drying off. Bricks just to stop the grass from sticking to the paint. Left them for about 3 days just to dry off, which was quite nice. Started to get quite excited about bolting it all together, because at this point it had never been bolted together. So as I'm taking these pictures, obviously I'm doing films. So if you're interested, just have a look at my channel. You can see some of the filming of the shelter. There I've put the galvanised nuts and washers back on, and the enthusiasts amongst you will notice that they're upside down. Originally in the book the threads should be upwards, but I didn't want to do that because the rain would hit the threads, possibly rust the threads, so I put the threads downwards. They've all been, this has been fully assembled as per the instruction manual, which I've also got. It is quite a job to assemble one of these, and they're heavy duty panels. How they used to do them back then I do not know. I'd imagine you've got your neighbour to help you. Now the next photograph here is one of the maker's plates that's inside the shelter that I managed to save. That didn't need shot blasting, and I've painted my Battleship Grey around it so you can still see the maker's plate inside. I might do a video in the future of my collection of photographs of all the maker's plates, which is quite interesting. There's the escape handles there. I had one escape handle that was intact from the original excavation, and I managed to get these 2 manufactured from exactly the same gauge and size metal. You can see there that if you get stuck in the shelter, if the front gets blocked, you just pull these down to the right and left, and the hatch behind just falls out. Some detail, and then you can climb out. There's some detail there of the bottoms looking upwards. You can see the nice washers holding the nuts nice and square in the ridges there. They look quite good. Didn't paint them, just WD-40. There's another picture there looking back. The way I got the back of the shelter to sit to the sides, obviously it's not buried, is I drilled little 3mm holes and wired them in with twist wire just so that it held the back on. otherwise they just fall because the weight of the earth is designed to hold the back and front on. There's the completed shelter now, and then obviously all that was next is just to find things to put in it. And have a look at my video on the completed shelter because it came out fantastic. That's museum quality. The War Museum shelter is not as good as that one. Even their one has got reproduction, modern corrugated. There's my ransoms crawler, and as you can see, I think looking at the background there's some spare parts that I had left over. There's a ransoms crawler tractor that was another recovery. Have a look at the videos, I do go over that. You can see the nice shelter on the left hand side. And then I started to get parts and that and make bunk beds for it. Just to, there's a picture there of the Morrison shelter on the right hand side. That's another story. That's fantastic. That's complete as well. So I started making bunk beds for the Anderson shelter. Thinking the next picture might be pictures of the bunk beds. I managed to get an original bunk bed from an Anderson and I copied it, and that's what we came out with. We came out with 4 adult bunks and 2 child bunks, which is quite nice. Manufactured it to the exact specifications, used original vintage wood. I think they were rafters from a loft extension that come out of a 1930s house, so even the wood is correct. That steel that I've used there, I used exactly the same gauge steel that was on the original government issued bunk. I can't remember the details, but if you go on the video, I think I do explain it. But the cells in that steel mesh is exact, even down to the gauge of the steel. They're just bent over and hammered into little holes. Started getting some gas masks together. Not letting away any secrets, but the blanket there they're just removal blankets. They look quite nice and they're quite hardy. Put a few gas masks, and there's a baby's gas mask on the right, which I may add, full of asbestos. Look at one of my other videos. I go into asbestos and gas masks. There's a nice photograph looking down. You can see the bolts. It's lovely because when the rain runs, it just runs straight off it. Everything inside is bone dry, which is fantastic. I've managed to get the shelter now under cover, so not even the rain hits it now. It's actually in an enclosed area. And there's another photograph, nearly a final photo of the shelter done before I located it into a larger covered area for display with everything left inside. I think you'll agree it looks fantastic. Thanks for watching. Check out my other videos.